Here's another story I have from a time when myself and my family lived in Claresholm, Alberta in 2003. We were living in Calgary, and unfortunately my dad had passed away. After my dad passed away, my mom wanted to sell the house. So we thought, well, why don't we move to Claresholm for a time, because it was the only way we could really do this, and help her clean up the house, clean up the yard, get everything painted, and sell it, because it was too much of a house for her to handle on her own. So my husband found a job there and we moved. So it was a really, really nice old house. It was built in around the 1940s. It was one of those, it was a square house, one story. It had like those rocks that were embedded, kind of that stucco, those sparkly rocks and black and white little rocks all in it for the siding. It had a really nice, curved front sidewalk, poured of cement with 3 steps going up to the front door. The back step was the same, another kind of a half circle made out of cement going up into the back steps, and huge backyard. And there was an old double car garage back there that had the old wooden doors to lift up, and it also had that gray stucco. So it was a really, really nice place, beautiful yard, really nice house. It was kept well inside. Anyway, so yeah, we moved down there. And my daughter Christina, who was 14 at the time, 15, she moved with us as well. So she was also in the house. How this house was situated was the main floor you came in on had the living room, the kitchen, down the hallway, bathroom, 2 bedrooms. Again, it wasn't a really big house. Beautiful hardwood floors throughout. And downstairs, it had been developed. There was a bathroom down there. There was a bedroom down there, laundry room. And there was a really big room as well that I believe there used to be a suite down there. It used to have cupboards with a sink, like a kitchen sink in there, and cupboards above. And there also used to be an old stove down there that you could cook on in that room. So that is the room that my husband and myself, we were staying in. And my daughter, she stayed in that other bedroom down in the basement. So we had been there for a little bit, a few months, and we started on the renovations and the painting and cleaning and repair of things. And my daughter got a job at the local Dairy Queen. It was her first job, and she was quite excited. It wasn't very far from the house. So it was her first day, I remember. Off she went to Dairy Queen, and she had come home. And when you go downstairs to that basement, there was a bit of a room there first before you went into that bigger room where my husband and I was staying in, or the other bedroom. And that bigger room down there had a lazy boy in it and a table. So she had come down, and we were downstairs in the basement. She came down and she plopped down on the lazy boy to tell us all about her first day. And so we're standing there talking to her, and she was quite excited. And all of a sudden I heard like this kind of a tap sound, like a knock sound, like something tapped hard on something. And right at that moment, my daughter quickly put her hand on her head like this, and she's looking around. And in my mind, I thought she was checking to see if she still had her visor on, because for Dairy Queen, and maybe they still do it to this day, they wear those visors. But her visor was in her lap. She had taken it off. So I thought she was like, oh my gosh, I left my visor at work. And I said, your visor's in your lap. And she said, that's not what I'm doing. She said, something just tapped me really hard on the head. I was like, what? I heard that. I didn't know what it was at the time, obviously. So that was kind of crazy. We were a little bit freaked out about it for a moment, thinking, whoa, who is here? But of course, we felt that it was my dad. My dad was a bit of a trickster. He was funny. He would do silly things, and I thought that's just something that he would do. And as a family who seems to be sensitive to ghosts, and we've had lots of hauntings in different places we have lived, it wasn't really scary. It was just kind of like, oh, yeah, that's your grandpa. So that was kind of the first thing that happened. And again, we just took it with some, well, he's letting us know he's here. So not really that big of a deal. And as life goes on, my husband and I, we would notice, like we obviously slept in that room in the basement there, the room that had the old kitchen cupboards with the sink in it, cupboards above. There was one cupboard door that, like all those doors, they were old cupboards. They were like handmade cupboards, nothing new or anything. You had to really push those doors. They closed. They latched shut. There was nothing that they would swing open easily with. So every single morning, one of them was always open. We never heard it open. And in fact, we should have, because when you open it, the latch always made a sound. And we never heard it, but it was always open in the morning. So again, it was like, oh, the cupboard's open. Well, Dad must be down here rooting around. I don't know. And the other thing was that on one of the other walls, there was like a wall unit, one of those ones that had kind of a door that would fold down. You could pull it down and open. It would be meant for like a mini bar in there, I suppose. You could put your TV in there as well, and you know, one of those wall units. But that one door also, almost every night, not every night, but almost every night, that one was also open. So could never understand who or what or why that was happening, but it was just a common occurrence. And the other odd thing, when we were in that room one day, we were standing talking over by the sink. We had a nightstand there beside the bed. I had a coaster on the nightstand, and we also had a cat that was ours, and he was laying on the bed sleeping. And we were standing by that sink talking, and all of a sudden that coaster just flew off of that nightstand right at the cat. The cat jumped up in the air, booked it out of the room. We were like, what the hell just happened? We couldn't believe what we just seen. But yeah, somehow the coaster was thrown at the cat. And again, I thought it was probably my dad, because we had a lot of cats over the years, but they were not allowed in the house at all. Even if we had dogs, they had outside dog houses. So again, I'm like, oh my God, that's probably my dad. He's upset there's a cat in the house. Yeah, so a few weird things happened in that room. So as time went on, there was another moment when my daughter came running upstairs, freaked out, because she was in her room, which was the other bedroom downstairs, saying that the chain, there was a pull chain, so there's no light switches in those rooms. It was always their pull chain to turn your ceiling light on. The chain that was hanging down all of a sudden just like flipped up high, really high, like not like it moved with air current or anything, but it was like somebody hit it. It flicked up. She was sitting on the bed. She's seen it, of course, freaked out, came running upstairs telling us about it. We came downstairs. Of course, there's nobody there. And yeah, so clearly we knew either my dad or somebody. My brother also had passed away quite a few years prior to that when he was 20, and he was also a little bit of a trickster and a funny guy. So we alluded a lot of that potentially to either of those guys. Whether it was them or not, I don't know. So another time when I was standing in the kitchen in front of the cupboards talking to my husband, I was wearing a hoodie, and somebody just yanked on my hood, like enough to jerk me back. There was no one behind me, obviously. I was standing in front of the cupboards. So I don't know how that happened either, but someone yanked on my hoodie. Yeah, odd, strange things just kept continuing to happen, just little things like that. There was probably more of these more minor things like doors opening or, you know, the string flicking or whatever, but you know, you might not notice in your day-to-day activities. Amidst all those oddball here and there sort of things going on in the house, there were two really big events that stick out most to me from our time there. We were only there for 9 months. This wasn't over years, it was just 9 months. So one hot summer day, my husband and I were enjoying a nice quiet afternoon. It was boiling hot out, it was bright and sunny. My mom was away visiting my brother. My daughter was working, so it was just the two of us at home. And it was my birthday. So he was out in front of the garage. He was sanding down the body of a bass guitar. He was wanting to repaint it, so he was out there working. I could hear the sander going every now and then. And so he was out there doing that, and I was laying on the couch in the living room reading a magazine, just relaxing, enjoying the beautiful day. And all of a sudden, I heard somebody playing on an organ, Happy Birthday, the Happy Birthday song. So this organ that was in the house was an organ that I have known to exist since the time I was born. It was an organ that my mom purchased at some point in time, way back when. It was brown. It had three or four, I don't know, 3 foot tall, long legs, tall, skinny legs that it sat on. And it worked with air, like you had to turn it on and this fan would start. And then as you press the keys, the wind would make the sound of whatever key you were pushing. It was old, and I played on it many a time as a child, and my mom carted it around with her everywhere she went. So that was downstairs in the bedroom that my husband and I were staying in as well. So when I heard that, I thought, oh, well, isn't that nice? I thought my husband at some point in the day had taken that outside, and because it seemed like it was coming from the back door area, but the stairs were to go downstairs were also by the back door. Anyways, I hadn't heard him come in the house, so this is why my mind was thinking he must have it right outside. And it played beautifully, and I thought, well, wasn't that nice of him to play Happy Birthday for me? So I got up and I went to the back door, and I opened the back door, and I looked out down towards the garage where he was working on the base, and he was still there. He was sanding. He was fully involved in his work. He was not playing an organ. It was like, oh, okay. So I was a little bit creeped at the moment. I went out and I told him what had just happened. I said, you didn't just play Happy Birthday for me? He goes, no, he didn't know what I was talking about. I'm out here working on my guitar, my bass. I said, well, you have to come in with me because there was an organ playing. It was Mom's organ playing. I know it's down in the basement, but my assumption was you took it out or you snuck it or something. No. So we came in, we went to the basement. Sure as heck, it's still sitting in the room down there. And it was not on. And in fact, it wasn't plugged in. So it's the only musical instrument in the house that's an organ that makes that sort of sound. That was 100% it. Like I said, I've heard it all my life. I know what it sounds like. And so, again, did my dad play Happy Birthday for me? Or did my brother? I don't know, but that was one of the strangest things that happened there. And then probably the last thing that happened that was pretty significant was when we were packing up to move. So we had done up the house and it was all ready to put up for sale. So my husband and I were going to move back into Calgary. And I remember there were a lot of boxes and things in the kitchen, and we had ordered in a pizza. We were up in the kitchen having pizza. My mom was there, my husband, my daughter, and we were talking away, yakking away, and all of a sudden, the biggest crash from the basement. Nobody was down there. So I thought, what fell over? Like, it made a heck of a clatter. So we just go booking it down there. We're looking around. We don't see a darn thing. But it was so loud. And then we flicked on the bathroom light. And we found it. In the bathroom, my husband and I had just redone that in preparation for selling the house. We had new lino put in. We repainted the walls, new toilet, new sink. And I had also put on the wall a wooden shelf that I had made. And it had eye hooks that on the top of it where you would hook that over top of a couple of nails. So we had 2 nails in the wall at an angle, and these 2 eye hooks hooked over those 2 nails, and we had a couple things on there. Now, that had been hanging there. Yes, we've only been there 9 months, but probably had been about at least 5 months that shelf had been hanging there. And what was on it, I don't remember everything that was on it, but I do remember one thing in particular, which was a big conch shell from the ocean that it belonged to my dad's dad. It belonged to my grandpa. It was really big, and I had set it up on there. And so, of course, that whole shelf is what has fallen on the floor. It was not on the wall. It was on the floor. But the strange thing about it is the nails were still in the wall perfectly as they were, so it had to have been lifted up off those nails because the nails were still there. It couldn't just fall like that. And right below that shelf that I had put on the wall was an old wash stand that belonged to my grandparents that my dad had refinished and So I had it sitting there with an old bowl and glass pitcher, kind of like antique. And so that was sitting right below that shelf. So not only did that shelf somehow lift up and off of those two nails, it did not come straight down as it should onto that washstand or that glass pitcher and bowl. It was out on the floor, just laying on the floor. And that washstand is probably 20 inches deep. It's not narrow, so it had to come out quite a ways to get to the floor. And that conch shell was sitting beautifully on the washstand. Upright, it was just sitting like someone placed it there. And then they took that shelf and just dropped it over here. It was so weird. I still don't know how that happened. Well, I think it was my dad or my brother again. That's how I think it actually happened. But if you think about some sort of way to explain it that doesn't involve something spiritual or ghostly, that I can't tell you. So, and yeah, then we ended up, we had moved out of the house. We're gone. The house is sold. And that is my story of the house that I lived in Claresholm, Alberta.